She clinked her champagne glass and raised it just high enough for the room to see the glint. "This is my husband, Noah," she said with a smirk. "He'll be serving you tonight. At least he has something useful to do for once." Laughter erupted like a damn comedy show. Some people clapped. Others just gave each other that smug look that rich people do when they're sure they're better than you. I stood there frozen for half a breath, my tray wobbling slightly from the tension in my hand. The ice in the drinks didn't rattle, but my bones did. My wife, Madison, was glowing in her silk emerald gown, her blonde hair twisted in some fancy updo that looked like it cost more than most people's rent. She was drunk on attention. And maybe champagne. Maybe both. Hell, maybe power. Whatever it was, it made her cruel. The company party was in our house. Our mansion. The one I paid for. The same one I let her decorate like it was some damn photo shoot from Modern Living. Now she paraded me like some pet. No, not even that. Like a joke. What they didn't know, what she didn't know, is that I was no damn waiter. I was the ghost that built this empire in silence. The CEO. The founder. The man behind the holding company that swallowed Madison's little boutique startup 2 years ago and wrapped it in enough shell corporations to keep me invisible. Madison used to brag about independence, how she was a self-made boss babe. But she never once asked how I could afford the mansion in Brentwood, or why I always had meetings overseas that didn't show up on Google. She didn't care. As long as I stayed out of her way and paid the bills, she was happy to treat me like an accessory in our own home. Tonight, she wanted to humiliate me, and I was going to let her, just long enough. While she strutted around introducing me to people as her helper, I watched the men she flirted with, especially that sleaze in the Navy suit. Bryce, VP of Marketing, always a little too close to her, always laughing too hard at her jokes. I knew what was going on. I'd seen the late-night texts when she left her phone in the bathroom. I'd watched the security footage when I was away on business. She thought I didn't know she was spreading her charm like cheap perfume across the office floors I technically owned. But tonight wasn't about her lies. Not yet. Halfway through the evening, her boss arrived, Mr. Grant Whitmore, a sharp-dressed bulldog of a man with eyes like a hawk. Everyone rushed to greet him. Madison, of course, sauntered over like she owned the building. "And who's this?" he asked, nodding toward me. Madison turned to him, still laughing from some pathetic joke. "Oh, that's my husband," she purred. "He's helping out tonight. He's between things." Grant tilted his head, then stared at me a second longer than usual. Then he took a step forward. "Noah, King," he said slowly, squinting. "Wait, that's you, isn't it?" The room started shifting. People slowed their chatter. Heads began turning. Madison blinked. "What are you talking about?" Grant broke into a grin. "You didn't tell me your husband was our CEO, the guy who owns Whitmore Holdings? The silent backer?" Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the floor and shattered like a gunshot. She looked at me like I'd just pulled off a mask. "You what?" she whispered. I took off the apron, folded it neatly, handed it to a real server, then turned to face her, calm as a loaded revolver. "Oh," I said with a polite smile. "Didn't I mention? I like staying under the radar. Helps me see people's true colors." And just like that, the room wasn't laughing anymore. She wasn't glowing anymore either. Just pale, exposed. And that was just the beginning. Madison didn't speak. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something clever, some kind of recovery line, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted to Bryce, then back to me, then to Grant, who still stood there smiling like he'd just witnessed the world's greatest reveal. The kind you don't forget. She took a step back. I stepped forward. "You know," I said casually, brushing a crumb off my sleeve. "It's funny how people treat you when they think you're beneath them. I've been to 6 of your parties, Mads. 6. And in every single one, you made damn sure no one took me seriously. You needed to be the star, right? You needed your trophy business and your obedient, underachieving husband. Someone who'd never outshine you." Grant chuckled under his breath. A few people shifted awkwardly. I could hear someone whisper, "Holy crap, she had no idea." And that's when Bryce tried to slide away through the crowd like he wasn't soaked in guilt. But not fast enough. "Bryce," I said sharp. He froze mid-step. "Why don't you stick around? You've been so close to my wife lately. You might as well be family." Now Bryce looked like he swallowed his tie. Madison tried to interject. "Noah, don't make a scene." I turned to her slowly. "A scene? Madison, you invited the damn orchestra." I saw her jaw tense, like she was about to lash out, but I beat her to it. You want a scene? Okay, let's start with last Tuesday. You said you were going to a spa retreat. Except I tracked your car to a cabin in Big Bear. You forgot I own the company that tracks luxury rentals, didn't you? Her eyes widened. And then there's the hotel key you left in your coat pocket. You know, the one from 3 weeks ago? Bryce signed the guest register. Dumb move, champ. Bryce looked like he might vomit. Madison's mask cracked. So you've been spying on me? I laughed. Spying? No. Observing. Quietly. Carefully. The way a CEO observes a failing investment. Her pride tried one last breath. You're overreacting. We were just talking. Sure, I cut in. Like you were just talking when I saw him zip up in the cabin footage? Someone gasped. It was over. The illusion. The image she'd crafted of herself. Powerful, untouchable, desired. It shattered like her stupid glass of champagne. I looked at Grant. I apologize for the distraction, sir. I just wanted to enjoy one last event before I submit my divorce papers. Don't worry, she'll still get her severance. Grant nodded slowly. I admire your patience, Noah. Hell of a move. Madison looked around the room like she was drowning and no one was reaching out. Not one of her fake friends moved. Not even her assistant. I stepped closer and said just loud enough for her to hear. You call me a poor waiter. But let me remind you, I own everything you touch. The house, the company, the account you used to buy your shoes, the car you loaned your mom. Tears welled up, but I didn't care. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying because she lost the power. As I turned to leave, Bryce finally spoke up. Look, man, I didn't know. Save it, I said. If you're lucky, the HR department won't have your exit papers printed before Monday. I walked out. Calm. Controlled. Just the way I came in. But inside, I was a storm. Not of anger anymore. That had passed. This was something colder. Sharper. I didn't look back. She never deserved a second glance. I sat in the back seat of the car as it pulled away from the mansion, my mansion. The driver didn't say a word. He knew. Everyone knew by now. And I didn't need to talk. My silence was louder than her mockery had ever been. The city lights blurred past the window, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. Maybe years. I replayed every moment. Not just tonight, but the last 2 years. All the subtle insults disguised as jokes. The empty compliments. The nights she came home tired and smelling like a cologne I didn't wear. The business trips she took that were too last minute for me to join. The way she started dressing differently. The way she started looking at me differently. Like I was just in the way. Madison had always loved image. And I was supposed to be part of hers. The background. The support beam. But I was never supposed to shine. Never supposed to take control. That was her game. Her illusion. And she played it well, until she forgot one thing. I built illusions for a living. She just decorated them. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Of course. Noah, please. We need to talk. Delete. Another one. I didn't mean any of that. I was just drunk and trying to be funny. Lie. Again. Can we fix this? You blindsided me, and I panicked. Fix this. The woman who laughed at me in front of 100 people now wanted to fix it. Like it was a scratch on her car, not a crack in her entire character. I tossed the phone on the seat and stared ahead. She was panicking because I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a drink in her face or storm out in some dramatic explosion. No, I let the truth do the talking. That's what always scared her. Silence. Control. Me being cold. When I got to the penthouse downtown, the doorman opened the glass doors like he'd been expecting me. Because he had. I bought this place 6 months ago. Quietly. In cash. Furnished it in secret. Set up utilities under a holding name. Madison thought I was in Europe on business last month. I was here, planning my exit. Watching everything unravel from the comfort of my leather chair and a security screen. I walked in, poured myself a drink. One that I wasn't handing to anyone else. And finally let out the breath I'd been holding since she dropped that glass. That moment, right there, was the click. The shift. She wasn't mine anymore. The woman I married died the moment she chose her ego over respect. The rest was just pretending. But now, the pretending was done. Another message. I can't sleep. Are you really going to leave me like this? No reply. Let her not sleep. Let her finally sit in silence and hear the truth echo back at her. She gambled with something she couldn't afford to lose. The man who built her entire world without ever needing to take credit for it. She took him for granted. And now? Now he was gone. I didn't go to the office the next morning. I didn't have to. By 8 a.m., HR had already delivered the internal memo. Bryce Miller was suspended indefinitely, pending investigation. By 9:15, the department heads had seen the ownership structure of Madison's company laid out in neat little graphs. Ownership that pointed directly to me. By noon, every single one of them knew that the man Madison paraded as a nobody was the one who paid their salaries. But I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about victory. I was thinking about the lies. The little ones, the petty ones. The ones she told with a smile while making breakfast, and the ones she spat out like venom during fights. Like the time she told her friends I forgot her birthday, when I had actually flown her parents in from Miami and set up a rooftop dinner under the stars. She told them I'd bailed last minute. That I always disappear when it matters. They didn't know she was the one who never showed up. Or the time she cried about how tired she was from work, collapsed on the couch, and begged for space, while Bryce was texting her about how he missed the way she moaned his name. She weaponized empathy, played the victim while juggling two lives. And I let her. Because I loved her once. Because I thought I could fix something that was already broken at its core. At 4:37 p.m., my lawyer called. It started, he said. What's the tone? Panic, he replied. She's claiming she was emotionally manipulated into the affair. Wants to salvage the marriage. I almost laughed. Of course she did. She saw what she was about to lose. She's also worried about her image, he added. The company's reputation, her brand, the Women in Leadership campaign. I own the trademark, I said coldly. A pause. You want to move forward with the divorce announcement? I didn't hesitate. Draft it. Include the part where I'm donating her share of the company to a foundation for women in actual need. Another pause. Then a chuckle. You're brutal. I'm fair, I said. That night, I stood by the window in my penthouse, watching the city buzz beneath me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was pretending. I wasn't suppressing rage, swallowing disappointment, or analyzing Madison's latest mood swing like it was a business problem. I was just still. Until the knock came. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I knew it was her. She would have cried all the way up the elevator, rehearsing some sob story for the front desk. Maybe she brought that perfume I used to like. Maybe she wore the same heels from the night we met, hoping nostalgia would soften me. But nothing could. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to give up. Then my phone lit up. You're really doing this? Throwing everything away? No, I wasn't throwing anything away. She already had. 3 days passed. I didn't block her. I wanted her to see everything. Every headline. Every share. Every tagged photo of Bryce leaving the office with his box of belongings. Head low, dignity shredded. I wanted her to scroll past the press release that named me as the sole shareholder and controlling executive of the holding group that owned her beloved empire. She didn't respond publicly. Of course not. She was still clinging to the image. Still praying that silence might erase humiliation. But I knew Madison better than she thought I did. She wasn't quiet out of shame. She was quiet because she was plotting. The next message came late at night. I was angry. I thought you didn't care about me anymore. I stared at it. The audacity. The rewriting of history. Bryce just made me feel seen. Seen. The same Bryce who couldn't even spell quarterly right in his emails. The one who asked me during a Zoom meeting what liquidity ratio meant like he'd never held a calculator. That Bryce made her feel seen. I didn't reply. I never would. Because that was her final mistake, thinking I still needed closure. Thinking she could cry her way back into the warmth she torched. The next morning, she came to the office. Unannounced. Security buzzed me, confused. I told them to let her in. I wanted to see what desperation looked like on her face. She walked in like a shadow, smaller than I remembered, somehow. Maybe it was the way her posture sagged without the fake pride holding her up. Or maybe I was just finally seeing clearly. Noah, she whispered. Can we talk? I motioned toward the chair in front of my desk, but didn't say a word. She sat down slowly, eyes glossy, hands fidgeting. I don't even know where to start. You start, I said, by acknowledging that you ruined everything. Not me, not work, not some imagined distance between us. You. Her lip trembled. She tried to wipe away a tear before it fell. I messed up. I know that. I didn't think. No, you didn't, I interrupted. You didn't think when you lied. When you laughed at me in my own home. When you let your side piece brag about how he knows your body better than your husband ever will on a company retreat that I funded. She froze. The blood drained from her face. She didn't know I knew that. But I did. People talk. And when you own the room, they whisper to you. I leaned forward, voice low. I could destroy you, Madison. Publicly. Legally. Financially. You know that, right? I know, she croaked. But I won't, I said. Her eyes widened in confused hope. Because you're not worth the effort anymore. And that, somehow, hit her harder than any threat ever could. She stood up, shaking, and walked out. No more tears. No more pleas. Just silence. And this time, I let her go. Not because I was done being angry, but because I was finally free. I didn't watch her leave. I kept my eyes on the window behind her, the skyline beyond the glass. Letting her walk out without a word was the most powerful sentence I'd ever spoken. There was no need to slam the door on her. Life was already doing that for me. The next week, I met with my legal team. Madison's attorney had sent a proposal. A pathetic one. She wanted to keep her personal assets, which apparently included a Bentley I bought, the condo in Aspen I never liked, and 40% of a company I legally owned in full. My lawyer looked up from the papers. You want to make this ugly? No, I said. I want to make it permanent. We drew up our own offer. Generous by court standards. Cold by emotional ones. No assets, no buyouts, no leverage. She could keep the shoes, the jewelry, and the fake art she thought made her look cultured. The house, gone. The company, gone. The lifestyle, canceled. When the proposal reached her, she didn't respond for 3 days. Then came the predictable move, a handwritten letter. On lavender stationery. A desperate Hail Mary of nostalgia. Do you remember our first apartment? The broken sink, the tiny kitchen, how we used to sit on the floor with takeout containers. We were happy, Noah. Before all the noise, before the money. You held me like I was your whole world. I miss that. I miss us. Can't we go back? Start again. The answer lived in the silence that followed. That girl, the one from the tiny kitchen, she didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by a woman who let another man unzip her in a cabin while I built her a future. The only thing she missed now was the power I gave her. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a flight. Someplace quiet. Ocean view. No cameras, no boardrooms, no betrayal in stilettos. As the plane cut through the clouds, I leaned back in my seat and stared at the sky. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't grieving. I was aware of what I tolerated, of how easy it is to mistake arrogance for confidence, of how love, when one-sided, isn't love at all, it's charity. And I was done giving handouts to someone who spit in my face and laughed while doing it. She'd learn, not because I'd teach her, but because life has a habit of showing mirrors to people who hide behind masks for too long. Me? I had nothing left to prove. I'd already won. 2 months later, her name popped up again, on a blog. One of those glossy lifestyle sites that used to praise her for being a self-made mogul with enviable taste in marble countertops. This time, though, the tone had shifted. Inside the fall of a fashion queen, divorce, scandal, and the CEO she never saw coming. She must have thought going public would salvage something. Maybe her dignity, maybe sympathy. The article painted her as a misunderstood wife, betrayed by a secretive husband with controlling tendencies. She claimed I'd blindsided her, that I'd manipulated her, that I set her up to fail. I read the entire thing with a glass of scotch in my hand and a slight smile on my face. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Because the woman in that article wasn't talking about me. She was describing a fantasy villain she invented so she wouldn't have to face the truth in the mirror. She could lie to the press, but she couldn't lie to herself at 3 a.m. when she rolled over to an empty bed and checked her phone to find nothing from me. That silence was her new reality, and I knew it echoed louder than anything I could ever say. What she didn't know was that I'd already moved on, not to another woman, not to some rebound fling like she probably expected. I moved on to peace, to mornings without suspicion, nights without resentment, a life without the constant need to tiptoe around someone else's insecurities disguised as ambition. I bought a vineyard in Sonoma, quiet, secluded, a place with soil, not marble, real roots instead of polished illusions. I'd always wanted to learn winemaking. Madison thought it was a waste of time, a rich man's hobby. But she was wrong, as usual. It wasn't about wine. It was about building something I could feel with my hands. Something honest. One day, as I walked through the vines, barefoot and muddy, my phone buzzed again. Her name. Still not deleted. Maybe I kept it as a reminder of what I'd survived. Just saw the article. I know you probably hate me. I get it now. Everything. I wish I could take it back. She still didn't get it. It wasn't about hate. I didn't hate her. I forgot her. And that's worse. I locked the screen, slipped the phone into my pocket, and kept walking through the vineyard, the wind carrying away everything I didn't need anymore, including her. She used to call me invisible. Now she was the one fading. A year later, I stood at the edge of the vineyard, watching the sun melt into the hills. The first batch of my wine, King's Edge, was bottled that morning. I didn't throw a party. No press, no influencers, no clinking glasses in a rented ballroom. Just a quiet celebration with a few real people. Friends who knew my story, not just the headlines. People who didn't care about titles, or money, or what brand of watch I wore. That evening, a couple visiting from out of state asked me if I was the owner. I nodded. The woman smiled and said, "Your wife must be proud." I just smiled back. "She used to be," I said. But she was proud of the wrong man. They laughed politely, not knowing the weight behind those words. And that was fine. My story wasn't for everyone. It wasn't a tragedy, and it sure as hell wasn't a fairy tale. It was a lesson. A brutal, necessary one. You can give someone the world, but if they were only ever looking for a throne, they'll never see its value. They'll sit on it, sure, but they won't build with you. They won't bleed with you. They'll just wait for the moment they think they can do better. And when that moment comes, let them go. Let them fall in love with someone else's spotlight. Let them forget the man who built the stage. Because eventually, the lights will fade, and all they'll be left with is the reflection of what they destroyed. Me? I found freedom in the wreckage. And if you're reading this, if you're the man who's still trying to fix what she keeps breaking, stop. Let her bury herself in her own lies. Let her chase admiration from men who only want one thing. Let her post quotes about loyalty while texting someone else under the table. Then walk away. Quietly. With purpose. With grace. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just becoming everything she said you couldn't be without her. And when the silence finally settles, when the dust clears, and she's staring at the ruins she called a life, she'll remember you, and you'll be too far gone to care.